nerds, and welcome. We are crossing the Nerdverse, and we are super excited to be coming out for you guys tonight. We have a very special episode, but first, we want to do a shout out. It is just going to be the three of us tonight. As you can tell, we are missing our joyous and flamboyant face in Travis. He's off doing dad stuff, and so we want to send him all the good energy and all the fun times. But in the meantime, with Travis gone and the three of us left entirely unsupervised, we, for some reason, put Clark in charge of tonight's episode. So it should be a lot of fun with tonight's topic. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and do the hi, how are yous? So, Eric, how you doing, man?
I'm not bad. It's been a little bit busy. I've now started linking up with the other podcasts to do the round table episode that I want to do. That's going to be like an offshot that we'll have on our stuff, but it'll be something a little bit different. So far I've got, I think there's 3 podcasts involved. We're trying to get a little bit bigger, and do one every probably 2 months. We'll do an episode, help other podcasters kind of grow. I also, too legit to crit. We're working, the scheduling's a little bit rougher this time, but we're still working it to get another episode, Blades in the Dark, Rebel Claws.
Oh, yeah. Super excited for that.
Yes, no, it'll be good. Also linked up with designer that is making a tabletop game. Looking at doing a review on that, so we're gonna get some PDFs sent to us. Check it out. Maybe if we can, we'll try to play it. If we can't play it, we'll just at least review it and talk about it. Since they're being courteous enough to send that stuff to us early. We'll kind of see how it goes once we get the PDFs and can sort of review and see where it's at. And I worked all week. Well, worked part of the week. My kid was sick too. So it's been pretty fucking crazy. But we are live, so hopefully we have an interesting isekai moment. I tried to do some research.
Well, sorry to hear that your kiddo's not feeling good. Definitely send some positive vibes that way. Wish a quick recovery. Clark, how about you? How was your week?
My week's been pretty good. I mean, it was basically the opening of the winter anime season, so I have been walking on the treadmill, ingesting an exorbitant amount of anime, adding new manga and manhwas to my list. And you know what? I have got to say, I have not been I had one disappointment, and I am kind of okay with that. Out of all the ones that I had on my list, everything is good. So I'm like, all right, I'm stacked for the rest of the year. And then, work, just getting back into the swing of things after taking a 2-week vacation for the holidays. I'm a big fan of vacation arbitrage, where I try and stack as few days as possible to get the most days off in a row. So Christmas and New Year's aligned really well with that. So just getting back into swing of work, starting our budget talks for next year, and just kind of deciding what all we're up to. So yeah, it was a pretty relaxing week. Lots of reading as well. So if you have any Goodreads recs, let me know, or send me your Goodreads links. I finally got bullied into setting mine up, so you can see all of the fantasy junk I am also burning through. I will not put the manga that I'm reading on there, only because I don't have that kind of time in my life to update how fast I go through those. So,
I totally understand that.
How was your week, Ryan?
Oh, my week's been pretty good. It's not the relaxing week, I guess. We are trying to get everything back on schedule after the winter holiday, obviously. We had lots of time off, had the kids home from school, all that good stuff, but now everything's getting back on track. And the minute we start doing that is when the crazy weather shows up, which I'm sure all of us are experiencing right now. And so, yeah, between 2 feet of snow and closures and delays and, all the normal stuff, it's been very, very hectic, but kind of in a good way, getting everything back on schedule. Geek-wise, I actually had 2 different focuses coming up. The first is I finally sat down and I watched Rebel Moon. And I know we did an episode a little while back talking about Rebel Moon, and ultimately, it was just the fact that we're not huge fans of Zack Snyder, which, okay, like, I'm going to stand by that. There's some stuff that he does that I think is awesome, some stuff that's not. But I did have a good friend of mine and one of our listeners that invited me over to do kind of a watch party. And so I watched the Rebel Moon movie, and then we watched the pilot episode for, I'm not going to be able to remember the name. Help me out here, Clark. You are our anime expert. It is a live action adaptation on Netflix of a popular anime where
Yu
he's
Yu?
like, no,
Yu Yu Hashima?
is it you?
Or-
Yeah, he's like a detective, like
Yeah.
hunts ghosts and stuff.
Yep.
Watched
Got
the live
finger
action of that
guns.
one. Yeah. I will say I enjoyed Rebel Moon, but I think I enjoyed it for the exact reasons that a lot of fans didn't enjoy it. It does have a lot of Star Wars meets Warhammer 40k elements that are very obvious.
Mhm.
But I liked it for that. I thought it was kind of cool, and I think it's going to be a real good setup for hopefully more Warhammer 40k style sci-fi to come out in the future. So I liked it. I'm looking forward to part 2. And the pilot episode for, what is it, Yu
Yu Yu Hakusho, I think.
There we go. I enjoyed that for a live action adaptation. I have to say it was better than I was anticipating. But they did try to keep a lot of elements as pure as possible from the anime, so when it translates to live action, it's a little odd, but in a good way. So do recommend that one as well.
It is oddly one that I have not watched in either anime or live action form. I have heard decent things about it though as a live action, and I know people have told me to go watch it as an anime.
Yeah, I've had
It's low on my list though. I
Yeah.
watched it like as a kid and stuff, but like it didn't do. I'm not that big on the characters themselves. Like I didn't think the characters
It
were
could be a
super
nostalgia
interesting.
thing as well. Like if
True.
it's like I'll watch a live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just because it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like
True story. But beyond that, I've actually, mostly because of Clark's bullying and my wife's bullying, I'm almost finished with A Court of Thorns and Roses from the Mossverse
bully, hell yeah! And
stuff.
are you talking about the first book or the
The first
series?
book, yeah, I'm nearly done
Oh,
with the
okay.
first book. My wife, once she got a hold of that, read the entire series in less than a week. It was ridiculous. I'm not going to consume at that pace.
What?
Uh,
You're not now. Are you under the Are you under the mountain?
I actually just got, like, that's where I stopped. I just got Under the Mountain.
Oh, you were about to become addicted under the mountain. Under the mountain is when it picks up.
Yeah,
All good
actually,
things
that
happen
was
under the mountain.
yeah.
Jesus.
So yeah, working through that.
It's
I
a
am
mountain,
looking forward
Eric.
to.
It's not even a sexual innuendo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
like
will.
if you
Actual
look, not
mountain.
all good things happen under the mountain. Look at Lord of the Rings. A whole lot of bad stuff happens under the mountain in Lord of the Rings. Although I do believe the new thing that Gandalf did solo, that creature, to level up faster. I do actually believe the rumor now. Like he took
Well,
the creature himself
Yeah, he
to
wanted
level
the
up. He
XP
kited
buff.
the creature.
well, of
Anyone
course
that played
Eric does.
EverQuest.
If you're a toxic player, you're going to assign the most toxic attributes you can to the other characters. Of course
So
he believes that.
Gandalf was toxic. See? Winning. Gandalf
It's like
was
playing chess with a pigeon. It really is. He's just going
How
to
was
knock
he
all the
not? He
pieces
took
over
it
and
by
shit on the board.
himself. See? Gandalf toxic.
Yeah, but
New
now you have
take.
to believe that in that realm you can level up, which it's never. You can't. Frodo would have leveled up, and so would have Sam. So it's negated by the fact that there's no XP in Lord of the Rings.
But you don't get a lot of XP for sneaking. They don't do a lot of killing.
They do some killing.
Some. A lot of the killing,
And you would
though,
still
is
get
Gandalf.
you would get cooking level ups. You would get like stamina buffs. I'm assuming
They probably got those.
you would get
Look at how we looked at
resistance
the
from
end.
carrying the ring for so long. You definitely get resistance if you have a toxin. Like if I've watched enough anime.
So before we actually get started, I'm going to yank on the reins just a little bit. I do want to take a moment, same as I do at the start and end of every episode, guys. If you're watching us and you're enjoying what you're watching, you want to watch a bunch of nerds sit down and give you their opinions on nerdy stuff, I'm going to ask you very kindly, very nicely to feed the algorithm. Now, we do this for you guys. Realistically, your viewership, you listening in, you listening to us on Spotify, that's more than enough for us. But in order to keep doing this, we kind of need to bow down to the algorithm overlords. So if you give us that like, give us the follow, give us the subscribe, and more importantly, tell all your nerdy friends about this cool new podcast and all the cool things that they talk about. But on the subject of gaining XP and earning levels of cooking in a real world scenario, tonight's episode is going to be about isekai, all about isekai and what is isekai, what it's not, the entire genre, and all the nitpickety goodness that we have going into this subgenre of anime, manga, and manhwa. Looks at Clark. All right,
Yep,
there we go.
manhwa. It's Korean.
Now this one's going to be
I
kind of
don't know
cool,
what
guys.
the Chinese version is called, but I should probably look
Yeah.
into that.
Well, as is kind of well known through the episode right now, I am not our anime guy. When it comes to the specifics and the good, the bad, the ugly, all the good stuff, Clark is our anime guy. She knows it all. She knows the ins and outs. She owns it all. It's all on the shelf behind her. And
I'm
so,
your anime boy.
yeah, I'm actually going to be a little bit of our control factor here. There are a few that I've watched that I just considered anime at the time. They were recommended to me by some of my friends that I did not realize were isekai stories. And before the episode, that was a large part of our conversation. Is there were a lot of isekai stories when we started doing our homework for this that I didn't realize fell into that subgenre. So I guess let's start. Clark, what is an isekai?
So, an isekai is a subgenre of fantasy, anime, manga, manhwa, and whatever the Chinese one is, which now I'm going to go look up. Basically, its standard definition is a different world or another world. And typically, you'll see 3 ways. And there's 2 main ways in which people get into the other one. I kind of have a third one because of a few of the topics that we're going to touch on. But typically, you're dead in our world and you're reincarnated. So that's typically when you meet like Truck-kun, and or the other one is overworked and you die when you get home and you're reincarnated by God to another world. Or you're summoned. Summoning is a big one where, the other world needs their OP hero to come in and slay the demon lord. So they summon the heroes, and the heroes come from our world. You're talking like Shield Hero. Konosuba is not one of the. Konosuba is a reincarnation. I'm trying to think of some of the other summoning ones. The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic. Let's see. No, Eminence in Shadows, he dies. So this is probably one of my favorite genres of fantasy. And we can go through what makes it my favorite. But you'll typically find OP characters in isekais, and it's usually due to the fact that they either get a special ability from God as a sorry for killing you ahead of schedule in your world, so we'll grant you an OP one, one of those is I'll survive using potions.
Yeah, reincarnated as a slime.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess the god grants Rimuru a special one. He just happens to have Beelzebub. So, spoiler alert, you find that out in the first 10 seconds of the anime.
Oh, that's a good moment. We're just going to blanket cover this. We are talking isekai, old, new, upcoming, niche, or well-known. Yeah. If you're listening to this episode, please be aware that going forward, there is a blanket spoiler alert warning. This includes novels, light novels, films, manga, anime, video games, whatever. All of it's going to be spoiled. So
yeah, and so you'll get typically OP heroes because of either a gift given by God or, because they come, if you're a summoner, because you were summoned from our world, you typically have special light magic that can only defeat the demon lord, or, you get the subclass hero, and only hero subclass can defeat the demon lord. A lot of demon lords in isekai.
It does seem
there's even an isekai called How Not to Summon a Demon Lord. So it's oh.
All right, so if it's basically a fantasy genre, then
Yes,
You have
it's a subgenre of fantasy.
all right. You have somebody that gets pulled into a whole nother world by whatever means, whether
Yep.
it's a portal or dying or whatever. And
Portal,
they have to
dying, VR
face off,
headset that malfunctions.
just to name a few.
Just
So I do like what you said about the demon lord thing, because that is a really recurring thing in a lot of these. There's always a demon lord of some kind.
yeah.
And one of my questions I was going to ask is if that was just a translation thing and it kind of acts as an umbrella, or if it's like very literal. Because right now I've seen there are a few things that kind of are always part of this genre. You know, I'm not going to say always, that's misleading, but are very commonly part of this genre. Things like you died and got to come back. Things like really bizarre and extra long titles. And
Yes.
demon lords. And so I guess right off the cuff, what was something that you would expect a story to have every time you pick up to read or to watch an isekai story?
If somebody tells me that I'm about to watch an isekai and that's all they tell me about it, I assume somebody's probably getting reincarnated by Truck-kun. I assume they're probably OP and I don't have to worry about them, that they will figure out how to get through everything. Like I have anxiety, and as 90% of us all do. But I don't like to get emotionally attached to a character that then just gets like murked 2 episodes in, or like Game of Thrones was not good for me. I didn't want to watch because I got attached to a character and I knew they would die next week no matter what. So like for me, I know my OP character is going to go through some trials and tribulations, but like they will be okay. It's typically how an isekai will run, and they're usually funny. There's very few isekais that are like super serious. I mean, even Tanya the Evil is it's a more it's the more serious version of isekai, but for the most part they have comic relief. They're like the sitcoms of anime in all reality. And I think that's like in the name of the titles. Like the ridiculously long ones. At one time I was reincarnated as a slime, or, my OP skill or my cheat skill makes me OP even at level 1, or I was reincarnated with my one punch death instant blow skill. Like they're just ridiculous names and I love them immensely because they're great memes. They're so much fun to meme.
I like the fact that you kind of explained part of that to me. That it scratches an itch in my brain, because one of the things that's always turned me off from the genre at large is that a lot of the characters, particularly the main characters, come back as this wildly overpowered super character that can't get touched, can't get stopped. And that's always been kind of a turnoff for me, right? Like it makes it feel like the stakes are very, very low. But you're right; it does kind of address that kind of anxious energy where you never really feel secure.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the isekais are more about emotional development and growth and attachment, more so than they are actually defeating the bad guy. And so I can see that. I liked the analogy. I think that works.
And it's
that
like,
works really well.
You'll look at things like Shield Hero. Okay, his challenge wasn't power level. It was the fact that society hates the Shield Hero because, the ex-Shield Hero slept with the king's wife or something like that. So it's like they're not necessarily battling. The big bad isn't necessarily their big bad battle. Their battle could be like the fact that everyone hates mages and they're the only mage. So it's kind of like they'll touch on certain items like that, like Rimuru in Slime. He reincarnates as a monster in a world where the church is currently trying to eradicate monsters. So it's how does he bring his monster realm to humanity, essentially, to make people get along with the orcs, ogres, dragon kind. Like, that's a lot of what you'll find is truly the challenge that your main character is facing. Or like, am I truly the strongest? He's a NEET who doesn't want to talk to anybody, Well, in this isekai, he has to make friends, essentially, and go to school. He didn't have a good time at school in real life, and now he's getting an opportunity to realize people aren't that bad. Same with Jobless Reincarnation. I can never remember the full name of it. It's like Moshu Ten. Oh, it's good.
By the way, shout out to the real Shield Hero, original D&D show, cartoon, from the way back when. I think
The
it was
dark
a warrior,
times.
and he only had a shield. So,
Yeah, that's all
original
Shield Hero?
Yeah.
The Shield
Yep.
Hero can only use a shield.
Yep.
He can't wield any other weapons. So it's kind of like...
I think the D&D guy could, but he didn't. I don't remember. It's been so long. That was from like the early 90s, late 80s. Original Shield Hero.
I think I own that series on DVD. My kids watch it a lot. I'll have to go back and review it.
It's a really old genre. Isekais is a very main... It's not new.
Yeah, and that's something I've been learning as I was doing my homework. Before we get into it, I do want to tell everybody we are going to be talking about several different isekai kind of animes in particular that were our favorites and what we liked and didn't like about them. But we are going to begin with a shout out question from our missing host as kind of a, we miss you, Travis. I hope everything is going well. Let's go ahead and cover the topic of Sword Art Online. Now, we covered it a little bit before the episode. We kind of talked about it, took kind of a stance on it. And whenever Travis was letting us know that he couldn't be here, that was the only thing he was like, hey, we need to decide if SAO actually counts as an isekai. And it brought up an interesting point. Because in that one, SAO was one of the ones that came to the forefront of my mind when we discussed this topic, right? It was kind of an obvious add-in for me, one of the basics, just like Overlord or Log Horizon. I was like, okay, we'll talk about SAO or Sword Art Online. But they never actually go to a different world. So
I am of the opinion that it is an isekai because their consciousness no longer exists in our world. So, like Log Horizon, where yes, you don't know what happens to their body, but it's probably a very similar thing where they don't know if they die in game. Well, Log Horizon, you do know if you die in game, you get resurrected. SAO, if you die in game, you die in real life. But because their consciousness is no longer in our realm, I believe it is an isekai. And to counter that, if you look at the new anime Shangri-La Frontier, which is so good, it's another one where they go into a different realm but have a VR headset that they're able to take off, so their consciousness remains in our realm. I don't consider that an isekai.
Okay.
No, I agree completely. Like SAO is definitely just because they can't leave. Like there's no getting out of it. And to the point to where they die. Like it kills them. So if it was like Log Horizon in the sense like they came back to life, maybe not as much because they're not. I don't feel like they're truly attached to the game if they can't die. Not trying to be creepy, folks, but like.
Are you truly a gamer
really,
if you don't
like,
die?
Yeah, so he's talking about the removal of stakes.
In the game?
Yeah, if you remove the stakes, it's a thing. Okay, so I want to bring up an interesting point.
In the game?
So the fortunate news for me is that there are a few that are on the isekai list that I count as some of my favorite anime I've ever watched. Didn't know they were isekai. And what you just brought up brings up an interesting kind of concept to me with the ability to log out. If they can go back to the other world, it doesn't mess it up as an isekai story. And I'm going to bring up Gate. And so you have Gate, giant portal opens up in Japan, military starts rolling through, and it's all modern military versus dragons and magic.
Yeah.
Right? But they can go home. So does Gate count?
No, because I don't count solo leveling or any of the tower ones as an isekai if you can get out of the tower and get out of the gate and get out of a dungeon, because you're not 100% transported to a different realm. You are temporarily in there.
James and Travis both agree with you that is not an isekai.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Are they in the
Travis
chat on
is just holding a
YouTube?
baby, chatting
Yep.
about it. He's like, I'm going to be a part of this damn podcast.
One way or another. Isekai is so interesting though to me because like there are some that are isekai, but it's hard to say that they are, like, even though I know they're being transported just because of the way I don't know, it's cheesy
You got
cartoons.
an example?
Just like we talked about it, like Escaflowne, like I don't think it's a real. I know he's transported, but like I don't know. I feel like
So,
it's just a cartoon.
y'all both
It's
say
not as
that
much.
getting stuck in the other world, irreparably stuck in the other world. That's
In
the
Stuck
hallmark.
with repercussions and stuff. Like you got to be.
I think it's just holistically stuck, because a lot of the times, and you'll see it when they get summoned, the king is like, we don't know how to send you back, but if you defeat the demon lord, like, we'll pretend to look in the magic, but then the person falls in love with the world and they don't want to leave anyways. But
Who
like,
would?
if you get reincarnated, you have to die and get hopefully reincarnated again, so it's not like you can go back. It's really only like the summoned ones who have potential to go back.
I see. So
yeah,
you don't
I
think
you have
gate
to wholly.
counts either?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So that does answer a few kind of interesting questions that I wanted to bring up right at the beginning, because gate was another one that came into my head as like, okay, isekai means another world. Cool, I can work with that. Gate, you're definitely adventuring in another world. You're just doing it in a tank.
Yep.
And so I counted gate. I counted gate as an isekai. And the ability to return home seems to negate that from the fan base.
Yeah, because like, I gained a cheat skill in another world, and now I'm OP in the real world. Like, I don't consider that an isekai. He basically finds a door where he can go to a fantasy realm, level himself up, and then take those levels back to our world. That to me is not an isekai. That to me, it's I got a cheat skill in another world and became unrivaled in ours. Like, that's not an isekai. That's just a fantasy.
Okay, so
Still in the same
effectively
branch.
that would put isekai as a subgenre of. Actually, I think I read this earlier on Wikipedia. They called isekai a subgenre of portal fantasy.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay.
If you
It'd be-
really
yeah,
want to,
very
if you really want to
particular.
give fantasy that many like that many roots, sure.
Sure, why not?
You're like,
All right,
it's
cool.
got. But do you reincarnate through a portal? No.
Well, and see,
They
that's
come out
the
of portal
interesting.
sometimes.
Sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes you're just like mist and you go through the world and then God whispers to you.
Yeah. So a lot of my favorites, I am going to give a shout out here. I'm going to give a shout out to Ugly. We've talked about him before on the show. A lot of the isekai anime that I really enjoyed were recommended to me by Ugly. And so, like, I mean, even ones that don't count, Gate, he recommended to me, but he also recommended Overlord. He recommended Shield Hero. He recommended Reincarnated as a Slime. And so, yeah, I think I was a bigger fan of this genre than I originally gave myself credit for. And so I do like the interesting caveat there in regards to SAO. Again, another one that Ugly recommended way back in the day to me. So SAO, Sword Art Online, does count as an isekai because they get stuck in the digital world.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I think I have a basis to go from now. So,
Inuyasha, isekai or no?
ooh, time travel? Interesting. So time travel back to feudal Japan to
And
help
she is
find
stuck
magic items.
eventually, like not in the very beginning, because she does go back, but then she is.
But is it in her world?
It is, but it's back in
Then
time.
not an isekai. That's a returner. Good try. It's a
Good
subgenre
try.
of fantasy. And it's basically, they're returners. Like, the returners' magic should be special. A guy lives his life, doesn't defeat the final boss, gets returned to the beginning. They have a similar trope line that isekais have, where isekais have, because you've been summoned or because you've been knowledge base that the average person living in that world does not have. So, like, a lot of the manhwas are you get teleported into a romance novel as the villainess, but you already have played through the storyline as the heroine, so like all of the uh, guys you can go date in the dating sim game, but a returner is the same thing. They get that knowledge of what's going to happen, but that is not an isekai. That is a returner.
Well,
Same
and
with Tower.
on top of that, Inuyasha
And
does
I've
not
watched
have
Tower.
the same levity and sitcominess that you would expect to find from the isekai that we described earlier, right? Like it's not a lighthearted anime. Now, the same argument could be made about SAO. If I'm being honest, SAO has lighthearted moments, but it's a very like heavy anime, and one that I only recently like. I guess I learned that Sword Art Online is not a fan favorite, right? Like it got very popular for a long time, but a lot of fans actually count it as an absolutely crap anime.
I don't like it.
There's a lot of people that don't like it. I will say that I do enjoy it and I enjoy watching it, but it suffers the same kind of problem that a lot of primary works do, in the fact that I cannot stand the main character.
Yeah, I hated him so much, and I thought it was going
Can't
to be the
stand him.
same way with Shield Hero, but I think they turned the corner much more swiftly and definitively in Shield Hero than they did in SAO. SAO, they just kind of let him be an ass for too long, and then there wasn't a truly definitive stage. But to say,
Yeah, there was when
I hated the main character of Jobless Reincarnation for so long. It took me a really long time not to hate that character, but they do it so well. And it just
he does have redemption when he all those guild people die. When he was in that first guild, like the
I think
moon
it's
people, whatever.
too little, too late, and then he's still kind of an ambiguous ass.
Yeah,
So
no,
here's-
he is to a point. Yeah, and he falls in love with like the female, and like they try to fix it with that. The only problem I have with SAO was they sped up the main point of the show too fast. Like they were in and out of that game too quick. Like years upon years happened in that game, and like it's realistically it's like half of the first season. I
Well, and
think
that
if
was
they would have
actually-
spent more time in the game and doing that, I think the show would have turned out better. When they came out of the game, and they tried to incorporate real life and all this other bullshit into it. I think that's when they started getting a lot of issues, and it really started just not making sense, and it got a little creepy with him and his sister in the other game, and like it was just, yeah,
I don't know if I would go into another game after I got sucked into one that could kill me. Like I think I'd put my VR headset down.
Well, and that's
Who
actually
am I
where
kidding?
I
No,
lost.
But
You would not. You're on a desperate quest to
I'd just
get
be like,
isekai'd.
putting them on.
But
I'm
yeah,
on my
when it
one
comes
shot,
to
one
SAO,
kill.
I enjoyed it, but I do fall into the group that very much counts him as the epitome of a Mary Sue. And through the first season, through the first game, I guess I should say, it made sense. He was a beta tester. He'd been playing the game for like a decade before they ended up getting stuck in it. You know, him knowing all the ins and outs and the little tweaks and the little things about that universe made sense. He was supposed to be the big
The
overpowered
only thing
hero.
that didn't make sense is how long the beta test lasted.
Yeah. Now,
Speaking as somebody who's doing it right now.
yeah. When you take him and you drop him into, I think it was called Elfheim,
Mhm.
which is a whole different game with a whole different set of mechanics and a whole different anything. And he goes in and he chooses what's considered this really low-powered kind of do-nothing class, and then ends up being the epic unstoppable hero anyway after like 20 minutes of playing this game. That's when I was like, man, he can just really do no wrong. And
There's
you
another
end up,
one kind of like that.
But if you look in real life though, like actually, like some people can go from game to game in BOP though.
you
Like, if you
can
look, like,
in
I
certain
know-
games.
I'm just saying, like if you look at it, that does actually happen. So that didn't bother me too much, especially because if you look at it, like the people that made Elfin, if I'm not mistaken, were kind of similar to the people that made SAO. So it wasn't
Yeah,
like
and
a
I guess I could
huge
see that.
deviation. So like, and
yeah,
but
but
it
the
just-
first
it like
person is a first person shooter.
Yeah,
like
and-
if you're good at first person shooters, you're probably going to be. But like if I stopped watching far enough into not knowing that they went to another game. But like, if he's going and he's like
Multiple other
already
games.
knowing the mechanics, I can kind of feel that because like in World of Warcraft, you have like AoE floor mechanics. I know not to stand in them. So if I go into Destiny 2 and I see something on the floor, I'm not going to stand in it. Am I going to know that the boss rampages after like X number of minutes? No, but I'm going to have a general concept of game mechanics. So like I can feel that one because I also like a playthrough of a certain dude's VR MMO life. Not an isekai because he gets to get out of the game, but it's basically that he's really good at this game because he's been gaming for 30 years. And I was
Well,
like, oh,
and
this feels like my
And he
spirit
was like
animal.
embedded in that other game for like years
Yeah.
upon years, and it was his own body. Like they show that when he comes out of the game, and like he
He's
fights for the
ripped.
first time, he doesn't know exactly like it's not a game anymore. But he like trains
Well,
with that wooden sword, and, like
yeah.
figures it out really fast, and it's
And it does have
muscle
a certain
memory.
level of like transfer skills, and I get that, right? But
Yeah.
that was my big thing. When you transfer from Sword Art Online, where there was no mechanics in Sword Art Online, your actual body motions covered your sword skills and that kind of stuff, right? There wasn't a lot of magic, there wasn't a lot of anything going on. And you transfer to Alfheim, even the movement wasn't right because they transferred from a first-person kind of fantasy player, so to speak, into this whole flight mechanics, magic,
Oh,
like
yeah, that I might have a
the
harder time
equipment
believing.
system was different. Like it was all. Now Eric does have a point. They were made by the same company or something similar to that in universe. And so maybe to a certain extent, but it just didn't make any sense to me. And then they actually, and this is another point where I kind of stand against a lot of the fan base because the third game they go to is called Gun Gale, I think.
Yeah, that was not very good.
I loved Gun Gale. I loved the main character from Gun Gale.
Oh, I would like to play the game, but like I thought the story just kept getting worse and like worse
I
and
liked it.
worse.
I think
But-
it's weird once they take them out of their original game that they were stuck in.
Yeah. Well, and
Like,
here's
at
the
that point,
thing.
you're just
At that point, they actually fixed a little bit, not all of it, but a little bit of the Mary Sue aspect, because they take him out of Alfheim and SAO, and effectively they take him out of WoW and drop him into Call of Duty or PUBG.
oh yeah, you're gonna have a
And
great
he
time
has
then.
no clue how to do anything. He gets to a point where he's like
He still gets a
moderately
lightsaber.
proficient. Yeah, but he does it by getting a lightsaber. And so I'm going to go into my gun game with my stabby pokey stick, and I'm going to start murking everybody. So again, Mary Sue, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so SAO was kind of my introduction, I guess, into an isekai genre, and that's where I fell in love with it. I didn't realize it was a genre. I didn't realize isekai was a genre, and yet I still proceeded down the line of watching things like Overlord, like Gate, like Black Summoner, and my all-time favorite anime
I
of
love
all
Black
time,
Summoner.
Yeah, it's a
Log
good one.
I like
Horizon.
the manga
So
of Black Summoner. The manga's way better than the anime.
Real quick, I don't know this. One of you two might know this. James says the jobless reincarnation protagonist sucks.
Yeah, so that's the Moshu Tenskai. I can't say it. I'm not even going to try and butcher that poor name. But Jobless Reincarnation, he sucks because... so this is my issue with anime as a whole, is they will sometimes sexualize younger-looking female characters or just truly young characters. So he is a 40-year-old jobless guy who dies and gets reincarnated and then is just like this super creepy young kid, and you're just like, this is fucking gross. And you watch it because everybody else is good, and then he slowly stops becoming a shitty character eventually. But yeah, there was some times where I'm just like, I hope he gets eaten by a dragon and I get a new main character.
yeah. So I'm actually going to use that segue right there when it comes to coming back into strange bodies, right? Because that was an interesting point and why I fell in love with Log Horizon. But I'm going to open on Overlord. So in a lot of these stories, Overlord being our primary example, you come in and you're transferred into this brand new form, whether you're reincarnated or whatever. And some of them just completely glaze over that. And it's part of the story that you are in control of your new form. You feel it, everything's shiny, and you get to go on ahead. In Overlord, for example, the main character, I think, is some kind of lich or like
Yeah,
necromancer,
he's a big
giant
skeleton boy.
skeleton guy. But then you start looking at ones like Reincarnated as a Slime, where he has to spend a long time really low powered while he learns how to slime. Like,
Yeah.
just moving around took him a little bit to like get used to. And when you start looking at Log Horizon, the base storyline of Log Horizon is that there's a whole bunch of people that get stuck in a video game, but not stuck in the same way that SAO got stuck. SAO got stuck with the headset and with all the game controls remaining precisely the way they were. In Log Horizon, it's like the reality took over, and a lot of the UI and a lot of the controls went away, and they had to learn how to redo it in game. And that translated to a really interesting kind of, little 2 or 3 episode mini plot where one of the characters had been playing a large kind of beefed out ninja guy. And it ended up being where in real life, she was like a 5'2" girl. And now that she was stuck in the game, she couldn't control her body. Everything was out of proportion. She couldn't use her skills. And she went through this whole thing where she had to get a potion to where she could change her appearance and put her back to being herself so she could do anything. And I think that was a huge part of that I enjoyed, that there was an overlap of game mechanics and new reality to that isekai that I really liked.
I do agree. I like it when they kind of have to like figure themselves out, like on the reincarnation ones. There's one called Reborn to the Master Blade, from Hero King to Extraordinary Squire, and he, the king, gets reincarnated as a woman, and he has to learn how to move now with like female anatomy, and like how it's different from when he would fight as a man, because he doesn't have like the size and the strength. Or I thought that was like a really cute take on it, when they like, it's not just, oh, I got this exact same body that I had back in the day, or this better body. So it's
Travis
always
just
fun.
screamed out Vendy-kun. Just want to throw that out there.
Vendy-kun is an isekai.
I was about to bring that up. That time I got reincarnated as a vending machine.
And now I wander the dungeons.
And now I wander the dungeons, yeah. And so, can you
full
imagine...
Christian name.
Can you imagine having to learn how to be a vending machine? Like, do they cover that at all? I've never watched the anime, so do they cover that at all? Or?
So, kind of. He does get some kind of, like, manual for himself, but his real OP skill is the fact that in his lifetime, he was infatuated with vending machines. And some of them are a little far-fetched as to what is considered a vending machine. Like, he all of a sudden becomes a CPR machine, or, like a nudie mag machine, or just kind of like, I don't know, technically yes, or like a gasoline machine. He becomes a gas pump, emergency oxygen machine. So he does get a little bit of help, but yeah, like when he's getting his resistance buff, he doesn't really know what that means. He's just kind of like, sure, I'll invest 5 gold into upping my resistance. I guess we'll figure out what that means for a vending machine. I'm trying to think of an isekai where somebody doesn't understand stats and accidentally puts their stats into something very stupid.
Isn't there one that's like, I put all my points into defense?
Yeah, but it turns out that's her playstyle, and also not an isekai, because she can leave the game. I don't want to get hurt, so I maxed out my my defense stats. Very cute. But that's her playstyle. So I think it works. I don't know anybody who's like, I put all of it into fishing and I never fished a day in my life, or something like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Another fun thing with isekais is like, a lot of the times the OP skill they get is kind of weird, and it's really fun to see how they go off and do things with it.
Oh
like
yeah,
campfire
absolutely.
cooking in another world with my absurd skill, he gets access to an online grocery store, and that's his skill, is he can just buy things from our world in this fantasy world, and he just runs around cooking things, and that's it. And it's really good, and it's very funny. So it's just kind of like, sometimes I enjoy the
Weird.
absurdity of their OP skills.
Well, and you kind of see that a little bit.
Travis
What you got?
also brought up. He brought up Ichi anime.
Ichi. Like
Yeah, he
I
said
don't
he
the
would know.
anime Ichi?
I don't know. He says ECCHI. Ichi animes. See, look, Travis,
well,
you're slowing us down. You're not even here. But at least you're doing something better.
So I actually that kind of aspect with the strange skills and that kind of stuff, you see that a little bit in Reincarnated as a Slime, right? Because that was the whole setup in episode 1 is you get so many like wishes or changes or whatever.
Ryan's
did
internet's
he?
becoming Ubides.
Yeah.
I haven't watched Reincarnated as a Slime. I don't know.
What?
I'm sorry.
It's really cute. I would consider it probably one of. Oh, okay. Ichi is just their
Farming in Another World.
is
that what
is
it's
lewd
doing?
and sexy anime.
Oh.
It's like your reverse harems, like, or just actual harem ones, where it's like I was reincarnated in another world with my smartphone, where 4 episodes in, the dude has 5 wives. Yeah, my farming skill, and it's just like everyone wants to sleep with the hero. But slime is a really easy one to get into, and I think the reason is the power levels make sense. It's not a massively complicated world that you have to immerse yourself into, and I think that's to bring up another reason that I like isekais is you're immersing yourself into the world at the same time that your main character is. So, like, you are learning the world together. You're not coming into a world where they already know the magic system. They're finding things out the same time you are. So it's a little bit more, I don't want to say relatable, but you're like, yeah, if I was in that position, I also would figure out X, Y, and Z. So, like, I think Slime is approachable in that way, and Rimuru is just really hard to like not love. He's just a very cute character. He becomes more and more OP to where you're just like, all right, he's never gonna have to worry about shit. But it's just kind of like fun to see how he gets like all of his OP friends to be his OP friends. Like he has a demon lord who's also dragon kind. He has the dragon Valdor, like Storm Dragon Valdori, is his buddy who just hangs out and reads manga in his city. Like it's kind of fun.
Weird.
Well, because Rimuru remembers manga, so he remembers it and he just makes it in his new fantasy realm that nobody's ever heard of it. And it's also
I'm trying to find. I watched it Isekai and I was trying to find it in my Crunchyroll account.
I know I have my Crunchyroll account up as like what I've been watching recently, and it is so good. A good one that just came out is The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic. I have thoroughly enjoyed that anime adaptation of the manga. It's very good. Same with Seventh Time Loop is not an isekai.
There's one I watched.
What's the one I was thinking of? Oh, Villainous Level 99. I may be the hidden boss, but I'm not the demon lord. Like, I just, the names. I will read isekai names.
Yeah,
like they're so great. Between that, Returners, and like dungeon and tower ones, I guess fantasy genre is where I live. And they're fun. Like, it's campfire cooking in another world. I can't recommend that one enough.
James mentions the world's finest assassin gets reincarnated in another world as an aristocrat. He picks weaker skills but uses them in OP ways.
Yes, that's a really, really good one. I'm hoping it gets season 2. Yeah, and then reincarnated, and that's actually on
Okay,
my
so
list.
I found it. I finally found it. The strongest
Yay.
sage with the weakest crest.
Yeah. So that
That's
one's
good.
kind of cute. Is that an isekai?
I don't know if it is. I'm going to be
I
totally
don't-
honest right now. I don't think it
I'm-
is.
I'm sorry, Eric. I don't think that's an
Shit.
isekai. It's good. So basically, he just keeps reincarnating himself in his same world to basically play through with every single crest that is in that world. And the only reason that people think it's a weak crest is because by the time he's on that playthrough of his life, they have forgotten like what that crest's ability is. It's basically a support role that people just don't remember how to use because the demon kind has infiltrated the school and taught them to like weaken humans. So yeah,
I didn't
not
know
an
that. I
isekai.
didn't watch that
I
far.
apologize to you. He's reincarnating
It's
in his
alright.
own world.
I thought
Konosuba is
I-
also really fun. Is a pretty solid isekai. God's blessing on this wonderful world. If you want a super
Travis
cute one,
mentions Wiseman's grandchild.
Wiseman's
And
grandchild is really good. Another
James
OP
says,
one.
Parallel World Pharmacy.
Parallel World Pharmacy is fantasy COVID. Is basically what it is. It's a scientist goes to another world, has the ability to, I think, create materials as long as he knows their chemical compound. So, like, he can, because he was a scientist in our world, he can think up the chemical chains for, like, the compound drugs that we have in our world and then create them in a pharmacy in this world. And he basically battles COVID in the last few episodes. It's really cute. I enjoyed it. I did not think I was going to, but Crunchyroll's like, you should probably watch this. And I was like, all right. So I burned through that one pretty fast.
Crunchyroll is smart, man. The way they do
Fluffy
everything.
Paradise is also cute as shit as an isekai.
I don't know. See, I haven't watched a lot of anime lately, and unfortunately, I got into a lot of long ones prior to. So, like,
Yeah.
I got sucked into like Black Clover and things like
Not
that.
an
So, like, they're
isekai.
just long. I know that's not. I'm just
The
saying,
Great
like,
Cleric
that's why I haven't.
is a good isekai. I really enjoy that one. It's kind of like he technically could be an overpowered character, but he's just a rare character instead. I really enjoyed that one. I think that's ongoing.
I'm all back and stuff.
Yay!
James said you should watch Kuma 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 Bear if you haven't.
Kuma 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 Bear.
Not.
Okay.
I haven't even heard of that. So
The
So, yes,
Aristocrats'
the Great Cleric-
Otherworldly Adventures.
The Great Cleric's white collar survival in another world, to use its God-given name.
I don't know that one at all.
I think it's. Which one is that one? Because I just
The Great-
know the Great Cleric. I didn't realize it had all that other stuff behind it.
I honestly don't
It's
know.
an
I think
isekai,
that
all of them
Oh,
probably
I think
okay.
that's a new one. Like, to be fair, I think it came out last year.
Yeah, the Great Cleric. It's a white-haired guy.
Yeah, it's white collar
Yeah.
survival in another world.
He's not white collar. He's an adventurer.
I don't know what to tell you. It's the whole title. Hold on, I can Google it real quick to be sure.
Maybe
I do apologize.
I guess he was a white collar guy.
Yeah, that could be it. So sorry for missing out. I do want to jump back in. I don't know which ones we've covered just yet, but I did want to cover
random.
something that you brought up earlier, Clark. About, and I don't know how to say this. Is it ReZero? ReZero?
Yeah, ReZero.
All right, and you said you didn't know if that one
Interesting.
counted or not, but you didn't feel like it was an isekai. Can you explain?
I think ReZero is an isekai.
Yeah,
okay.
like the description to me sounds like it is.
Yeah, because he
I
does
haven't watched
get
too much of it.
reincarnated initially, I think.
So does it have to be
I
just the
watched-
main character, or what if other characters are?
So I think you can. A lot of the summoning ones has like 2 or 3 people who get summoned as heroes, but I think your main character has to be part, like, if I got summoned to another world as like a farm person and the anime was not about my farm, I don't think it counts. Like,
I'm just
I
thinking
think
of Fate
interesting.
Zero, like all the fates, because it's such a, like, to me it's a weird one. I don't think it's an isekai, but I think you could make the argument possibly because some of the
Well,
summons, like especially King Arthur,
but the
like
summons
she was
don't
kind of like
stay,
the
right?
main.
The summons don't stay; they go back, right? Eventually,
Well,
yeah, they have to.
yeah, I think when they die, they go, but they still don't go back to like their timeline. They go back to this like weird ass place.
I think it
And
might
if
be an
you,
isekai for them.
Oh,
So,
so it's
like,
subjective.
well, so we were talking about this in pre-show. The Devil is a Part-Timer is considered an isekai. I had never considered that an isekai, but the devil and the hero come to our world from another realm. So for them, they are isekai. They are transported and they just happen to now be in our realm. And I was like, oh, add another one I enjoy to the isekai list.
There you go.
That had never crossed my mind for it to be reverse. But I guess, yeah, if a character that has substantial screen time is summoned to our world and they can't go back to theirs, or it's very hard to go back to theirs, I would consider that an isekai from their perspective.
Well, and that does bring up an interesting point on some of the things that we talked about for the show that are technically isekais that stood out as I never really considered that, right? And Eric, you had a great one that you were going to bring up in Digimon.
I mean, yeah, that one's, it's an interesting one. I don't know, like, I mean, it's obviously an isekai because they go to another place, but like eventually they start going back and forth all the time.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Eventually they
That's
do.
that's what I
What?
kind of wonder, like, Sword Art Online, it started out as an isekai,
Yeah, it doesn't
and
end as one.
does it end as one? So it's kind of like, you could probably fall into that class as long as at one point in time
Oh,
you were technically
this was
an
the
isekai.
Fate. This was the one I wanted. Fate stay the night, or Fate stay night. How do they say it?
There's
What's
so
the...
many Fate Grand
Okay,
Order.
so
Yeah.
that particular one, that's the one with the kid, if you remember, and he can summon like the dual swords. No, they're not like the dual knives. And then like
Yeah,
one of these summons is actually him because he eventually becomes a hero. And he like fights himself and it gets crazy. He was
guess you could
Archer.
probably
That one I'm
consider that one an isekai if he gets him. He becomes a hero.
That was the one I meant. So yeah, so what happens is he's in the tournament, like you know how they fight for the whatever the cup. So he's in it, and he doesn't realize that one of the summons, which is Archer, is actually him. So after the tournament, like when he wins and everything, like he goes on to become this like hero, and he gets martyred,
and he gets
like
transported.
He gets killed. Yes, and so when
then
this,
isekai.
So I went ahead and Googled
it's a weird one though.
Just to try to get a definition. We do that on episodes, right? Now, the New York Public Library, because New York,
of Illinois,
definitely, of Illinois. They
all of his
defined
references have been from Illinois lately, where apparently the U.S. keeps all their weebs.
Right. So, any case, they said isekai is a subgenre of fantasy in which a character is suddenly transported from their world into a new or unfamiliar one. Now, for me, and I imagine what they talk about if I go further into the article, this brings up things like Wizard of Oz, Peter Pan, and Alice in Wonderland.
And isekais.
Yeah, all isekais, right? And so
Yeah.
this is not an unfamiliar genre for most people. Like, everybody knows the story of Peter Pan. Everybody knows Alice in Wonderland. One of my favorite stories of all time.
Well, I don't
And
know if
so-
Alice in Wonderland counts, because wasn't that just, it turns out it was just a drug trip and not like her actually going down the rabbit hole?
It depends.
Depends.
On what you look at. Because if we go into
Okay.
Alice in Wonderland for a minute. Now, fortunately, this is an area I have a little bit of expertise.
He's like cracking his knuckles. He's like, yeah, my time to shine.
So the interesting thing about Alice in Wonderland is the constant and endless debate on the symbolism and what it was meant to do and what everything was going on and on about. Because you will have some people tell you that it is about the loss of innocence and that it's an existential journey. You'll have some people tell you that it's actually a tale of warning against drugs and alcohol and party life. And there's a lot of in-depth kind of like dissecting about that. But in my opinion, and the opinion of most of the academics that I've talked to on the subject, Alice in Wonderland is about math. Because Lewis Carroll was a mathematician that wrote mathematics. And Lewis Carroll was a mathematician that wrote a goofy story for a child, right? But he based it off of this really upsetting and newfangled, new agey idea of advanced mathematics and using things like imaginary numbers and using substitution values and things like algebra and geometry that he just did not like. He did not like the idea of imaginary numbers or anything that was acting outside of the normal realm that he understood. And that's what Alice in Wonderland was based on, is he imagined a world where that type of math was the real math, and we got Wonderland.
So isekai. Math isekai.
Yeah. It's a mathematics isekai. But when you look at just the story itself, in fact, let's look at just the Disney version, right? It was a little bit different. It covered a lot of the main basics, but you actually watch it happen at the beginning where she falls down the rabbit hole. And there's a whole sequence with that, right?
Summoning
that wasn't
portal right there.
That's exactly right. She obviously was not delusional. She was not high. She was not drunk. But at the end, she just wakes back up in her body.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we actually see some similar things happen in a lot of the other isekais, right? A lot of times we don't think about it, but I'm going to bring up SAO again. He went down the rabbit hole. It's just the only difference is instead of falling down the rabbit hole, he put the machine on his head and jumped.
Logged into the rabbit hole.
Yeah. But in the end, he just wakes back up in his body. The only difference is he got to take the rabbit hole off of his head once he woke up.
Yeah.
And
his
so, yeah,
body was like messed up.
Yeah.
But
I would absolutely count. I mean, those are kind of your big three main stories. In fact, even if you add the big four, we joke about this a lot between me and my friends. Your big four story worlds, right? You have Wonderland, you have Neverland, you have Oz, and you have Narnia. And even Narnia is kind of a portal fantasy.
Narnia is not, because they go back and forth.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you full isekai
I was going to call
on
it.
Narnia.
I'm going to call portal fantasy on Narnia.
Yeah, I mean, they walk through a dresser.
It's literally a portal. Like, they opened a door and walked into it.
Oh, so you're the person who's putting all these weird subgenres under my fantasy genre. Okay.
I'm adding roots to the tree.
You're my portal boy.
Clark mentioned earlier the big joke about Illinois. So in doing the homework before the episode, of course, I'm the one that sits down and tries to find the bizarre, crunchy academic side of all this shit. And ironically, I found a couple of things. Firstly, there is a lot of people posting as authorities on isekai and this kind of stuff from Illinois, more than I expected. And most notably is, let me go back to the top of this article here, is Dr. Paul S. Price, who published a survey of the story elements of isekai manga in the Journal of Anime and Manga Studies in, you guessed it, Illinois, because that's where the authorities obviously are, right?
That's where we keep them.
The really crunchiness that I find fascinating, because I don't want to take up all of our airtime here, but he posits 4 different types of isekai that kind of create the umbrella of the subgenre, right? Now, the first one's Portal, which is where you have the real world and isekai, and you walk through a door, and that's what happens. One-way trip. And then he has Immersive. And this is kind of an interesting one for me, because in the immersive isekai, it applies more to what we talked about earlier with Inuyasha, right? He says in the immersive, it's a closed cycle. There is a story, and you are reincarnated or sent back to the beginning of the story to do it again. And then you have Intrusion Isekai, and this is the devil is a part-timer. Fantasy world of high magic, goes through a portal, ends up in Detroit. Like, and then you have, yeah.
Oh, that's harsh. Crime
You
is
could-
down in Detroit.
Yeah, because
Well, I just
nobody's
picked a-
left.
I just
No,
picked a
because
random
Detroit's
city, but
in the playoffs.